Some nightmares don't end when you wake up. These 3 true stories unravel the threads of reality, diving into a world where horror is not a fleeting sensation, but a relentless force that consumes you from the inside out. If you dare to face the darkness that defies logic and sanity, then join us on this journey into the heart of fear. Beware. This is no ordinary story. It's an experience that will haunt you long after the final word. Patrick arrived at our high school like a storm, rolling in from the horizon, unexpected and unstoppable. He was a mystery no one could solve, a puzzle piece that didn't fit into the picture of ordinary teenage life. He wore a tattered gray hoodie, stained with smudges of an unidentifiable black substance, and dark sunglasses that he never removed, not even in the darkest corners of the school. It was as if he was hiding something behind those glasses, something inhuman. Rumors about Patrick began to spread like wildfire from the moment he stepped foot in the school. There were whispers that he came from a broken home, that he was an orphan who had bounced from one foster family to another until no one wanted him. Others said he wasn't even from our town, that he'd appeared out of nowhere, with no record, no past, no trace of who he was before he walked into our lives. Some claimed that they saw him standing in the hallways even when the school was locked up for the night, muttering to himself in a language no one could understand. One thing was clear: Patrick was different, not just in the way he dressed or acted, but in the way he made people feel. His presence was like a black hole, sucking the energy out of the room, turning every whisper into a shout of alarm in your mind. He didn't just look at you, he saw you, through and through, like he was reading the pages of your darkest secrets. The first time he spoke to me was during a stormy afternoon. The sky was covered in dark clouds that seemed to press down on the town, suffocating the light. I was sitting in the school library, trying to lose myself in a book, when I felt the air around me grow cold, heavy, like it was filled with invisible eyes. I looked up and there he was, Patrick, standing at the end of the aisle, his gaze fixed on me like a predator sizing up its prey. Without a word, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He handed it to me, his fingers brushing against mine, and in that brief contact, I felt a chill seep into my skin, like ice spreading through my veins. The paper felt unnaturally cold, like it had been left outside in the snow, even though it was a humid day. "You've been chosen. The mark has been made. Do not run." The words seemed to pulsate on the page, their edges blurring as if they were written with liquid darkness. When I looked back up, Patrick was gone, vanished like a shadow in the blink of an eye. But his presence lingered, a whisper in the back of my mind, telling me that I'd crossed a line I could never uncross. From that day on, everything around me started to change. I would catch glimpses of Patrick in the most unexpected places, reflected in mirrors, in the flicker of TV screens, in the windows of passing cars. It was like he was a ghost haunting every corner of my world. His image burned into my vision. The hallucinations began soon after. I would wake in the middle of the night to see him standing at the foot of my bed, his face obscured by darkness, but his eyes glowing with an unnatural light. They were like twin stars burning in the void, pulling me toward a darkness that had no end. His mouth would move, but no sound came out, yet I could hear his voice in my head, echoing like a chant. "You are mine. You are never alone." Every time I thought I was alone, I'd see his shadow stretched long across the walls, twisted and warped, like it belonged to a creature that wasn't quite human. The shadows seemed to move on their own, creeping closer when I wasn't looking, reaching out for me with fingers that were too long, too thin, too alive. If this first chapter has you on edge, like and share this video with those who need to feel the chill of true fear. There's more darkness to come. Gabby, Laura, and I were the only ones who seemed to understand the extent of Patrick's reach. We became each other's lifeline, clinging to the last remnants of sanity as Patrick's influence grew stronger. We decided to meet at Laura's house one evening, hoping that being together would break the grip of fear that tightened around our lives. The moment we started talking about him, the room seemed to darken, like the shadows were alive and listening. We whispered his name, trying to make light of his creepy behavior, but the fear in our voices was undeniable. Then, without warning, the lights flickered and the room plunged into darkness. Laura's mom's voice broke the silence, calling from the hallway, "Patrick, is that you? What are you doing here?" My blood turned to ice. How could he be there? How did he know we were talking about him? Patrick stepped into the light of the room, his smile stretching too wide, his eyes hidden but still somehow seeing everything. The air around us turned cold, like the warmth had been sucked out by a vacuum. He stood in the doorway, his presence as solid and immovable as a wall, and said in a voice that dripped with menace, "You summoned me. I always come when called." It wasn't just us anymore. Patrick's reach began to extend beyond our circle, infecting everyone around us. My teachers started to look different, paler, with dark circles under their eyes. They moved like marionettes, their movements stiff and unnatural, their eyes darting to places where Patrick stood, unseen by others, but always visible to me. My friends' parents started seeing him too. They'd mention a strange man standing outside their house at night, watching from the shadows. They described his grin, his dark glasses, the way he never seemed to move, yet always seemed to be closer the next time they looked. Everyone began to change, as if Patrick's presence was infecting their minds, turning their thoughts to darkness, bending reality to his will. One by one, people at school began to act like they knew him, like they were under his spell. They'd stare at me with hollow eyes, their lips curling into the same twisted smile that Patrick wore. When I confronted them, they'd laugh, a hollow, echoing sound that didn't belong to them. They said they'd been adopted by Patrick, that they were his now, just like I was. Desperate to break free from the nightmare, I did the one thing I had been warned never to do. I spoke his name 3 times in front of a mirror. The room around me seemed to shiver, the glass of the mirror warping, twisting, as if trying to pull me inside. Patrick's face appeared in the reflection, not behind me, but in the mirror itself, grinning like he'd been waiting for this moment. "Why are you doing this?" I shouted, my voice cracking. His image in the mirror didn't answer. Instead, his grin widened, his face distorting until it was no longer human, a twisted, grotesque mask of malevolence. His mouth opened wide, and from the darkness inside, I saw countless eyes staring back at me, eyes that belonged to people I recognized, my friends, my family, myself. The mirror shattered into pieces, each shard reflecting Patrick's face, each version of him grinning wider, his laughter echoing through the room, even though his mouth remained still. I felt something inside me break, a piece of my soul torn away, leaving a hollow void that pulsed with the same darkness I saw in Patrick's eyes. Have you ever experienced something so terrifying that it left a permanent mark on your soul? Share your stories in the comments. This is far from over. After that night, my home was never the same. It was like Patrick's presence had seeped into the walls, into the very foundation of the house. Doors that were once familiar began to lead to places they shouldn't. a closet that opened into a dark, endless hallway, a window that showed not the outside world, but another room where Patrick stood, watching me from every angle. I could hear whispers through the vents at night, words I didn't understand, but somehow knew were meant for me. I started finding strange objects around the house, pieces of broken mirrors, old photographs with my face scratched out, dolls with their eyes painted black. Each item felt like a message, a reminder that this was only the beginning, that Patrick's hold on my life was tightening. Patrick's power grew to the point where he didn't just control my present, he began to change my past. I looked through old photo albums and found pictures of myself as a child. Pictures where Patrick was in the background, always watching, always smiling that same awful grin. In one photograph, I was blowing out candles on my birthday cake, and behind me stood Patrick, his eyes glowing from the darkness, unnoticed by everyone but me. Old friends began to tell me stories about things I'd done with Patrick in the past, things I had no memory of. They spoke of games we used to play, secrets we used to share, and how he'd been part of my life since the beginning. My memories felt like they were slipping through my fingers, reality warping under his touch, until I couldn't tell what was real and what was the result of his twisted manipulation. On the final night, the storm outside reached its peak. Lightning turned the sky into a battlefield. Thunder roared like the end of the world, and the wind screamed through the cracks in my house like it was alive. Patrick appeared at my window, his face lit up by the lightning, his grin so wide it seemed to split his face in two. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His eyes said everything. They told me that I belonged to him now, that no matter how far I ran, no matter how hard I fought, I could never escape. He was inside me, part of me, his darkness intertwined with my soul. I tried to run, but the house twisted around me, turning into a labyrinth of endless hallways and staircases that led nowhere. Every door I opened revealed another version of Patrick, another grin, another pair of eyes that watched me with eternal hunger. I screamed until my throat was raw, but there was no escape. As I stumbled into the basement, I found a mirror covered in dust, and in the reflection, I saw myself, not as I am, but as I was as a child. Standing beside my younger self was Patrick, holding my hand, whispering into my ear. And then I realized Patrick had always been there. He was never a stranger. He was a part of me, a dark shadow that had followed me through every moment of my life. The mirror cracked, and I felt my reality shatter with it. Patrick's laughter filled the room, echoing through the darkness, a sound that would haunt me forever. I was trapped in his world, his nightmare, and I knew that I would never wake up. If this story has kept you in the grip of terror, don't forget to subscribe to Nightmare Narratives. This is only the beginning. The nightmare has just begun, and it's waiting for you.